in there and share it. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Carville Bailey, and we back one more time again for life and basketball. We're here from Bless the Ball Studios in Chicagoland, Illinois, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on introduction today because I have so much to talk about with a good buddy of mine, and I want to bring it to you all. So what I say, as I always say, hit the share button, hit the invite button, hit the like button, give us some hearts, but you definitely want to tune in to this show. I know I say that every week, right? Well, we bringing you value every time we come on, because what life and basketball does is we take real life situations and then we take basketball and we break it down and we understand how basketball and life has synergy and how they work together. And if you understand one, you'll understand the other, and then you'll be that much greater in all that you do. So again, I'm your host, Carville Bailey. This show is being sponsored by Bless the Ball Skill Development Academy. I am the president and CEO of that company. We are a year-round skill development academy in which we enhance and develop individuals physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and we do all those things through the vehicle of basketball. As you will hear from my guests this afternoon, that little orange thing can take you places that you probably couldn't take yourself individually. So I always tell my players, if you be good to it, it'll be good to you. But if you mistreat it, it's going to eventually mistreat you. So without further ado, let me not forget, this book is also being, the program is also being sponsored by my book. All right, it's called Understanding Life Through the Game of Basketball. All right, it is a guide to effective leadership and coaching. I say it every week or twice a week. This book will not show you how to hold a basketball. It will not show you how to shoot a jump shot. It will not give you X's and O's. This book will help you mentally to be able to understand, one, the psyche that goes behind great leaders. All right, great coaches, and coaches are leaders. You have some leaders that are coaches, but when it's all said and done, most of them are teachers. Now I'm saying most of them, right, are teachers, but I'm saying most of them because everybody doesn't understand this, that basketball is an indication of life. And the ball will stop bouncing at some point in time. Get on the camera. The ball will stop bouncing at some point in time in your life. So when the ball stops bouncing, you have to have something to fall back on, and you have to know how to act accordingly. And that's what this book does. So it's great for parents. Parents, if you want to know why your kids' coach may do one thing or not do something, it's good for that. It's good for you as a parent because you are a coach and a leader in your household. Players, it's good for you because they can get you to understand why that particular individual, be it a parent, coach, whoever, is on you the way that they're on you. For coaches, leaders, this is a great book for any type of professional development or anything. It goes great with it. But without further ado, I want to introduce to some, and present to most. All right, my buddy, and I'm gonna let him speak for himself. But public speaker, he's a mentor, he's an author, he's a father, he's a husband. He is, as I call him, the myth, the legend, my buddy, Deon Thomas. Coach, what's up, man? How you doing?
My man, I appreciate it, bro. That's one of the best introductions I've gotten in a while. Hey, Bill, first of all, I want to thank you, man, for having me on. I've definitely sat and I've watched several of your shows, especially with the historic tree, which most people won't know who that is, but they should know who he is because he's dropping knowledge all the time ever since we were young people, young pups. But I thank you for having me on, man. I think what you're doing is extremely positive. It's well needed. and a lot of people don't understand that, like you said, this game is a vehicle. It's a vehicle that can take you anywhere in the world. I mean, as it did with me. I'm a kid that grew up in the Village on the west side of Chicago, and then moved from there for a short time to Inglewood, which, as we all know, is another not so nice area in the city. And it took me all around the world. Now, granted, everybody doesn't hit the genetic lottery and grow to be 6'8", but regardless of that, we all got a brain inside our head, and we all got a heart inside of our chest. So it's a matter of how you use that thing to get to where you want to be.
There you go, man. And now, this is what real people do. Real recognize real. I posted the promo yesterday, tagged D in it. All right, it was kind of late after we talked. We wanted to wait until he got back, in town. But he texted me, and he like, nah, Chris Harris, we talked about it. Brian Notre, we talked about it. Tree. Almost every show we've talked about West Side and South Side. But Deon hit me. He said, bro, I'm from the Village. And I'm like, my fault, because I put South Side Zone. Well, I knew that he was from Inglewood, around the time when I first started hearing about Deon Thomas. I graduated in '93, so as I'm going into high school, it was when, he was, blossoming. And so that's what I knew. But I stand corrected, changed it. And it's funny because, as I told him, between 97 and 2003, I actually lived on 13th and Ashland on the west side, right in back of the Village, like right across the street from Montefiore. So, that's, it was, funny that he, told me that. And so it brings to my first question. I always ask everybody, being from the Village, and my dad was actually born in the Village, right? My mom and dad, aunts and uncles, they're all from the west side, which is why I always feel comfortable with the west side. But, you being from the Village, me living over there, seeing the good and the bad, in the Village, how did growing up in the Obla homes, which, a lot of people don't know, right? How did living there help shape and mold you as a young man before transitioning to Inglewood? And then how did Inglewood then further develop you into that person that you needed to be?
Well, I'll put it like this, Vel, and my boy Notre, what's up, baby? No, but I'll put it like this. I tell a story to a lot of people about scabs. When you cut yourself in that skin, that ugly piece of skin that grows over, and people look down upon it. What the Village did, what Inglewood did for me, both gave me a lot of scabs. And what scabs do to me is nothing but make you stronger. They give you an opportunity to get better. They give you an opportunity to learn from whatever takes place. I'll give you a quick little story. Now, growing up in the Village is tough. Growing up in any ghetto is tough. So my first fight, I get into a fight, I whoop dude, and so I'm walking home one day, and all of a sudden I get bum rushed by 3 people.
Right.
I took that, you could have taken that as a bad thing or a horrible thing, but what it taught me was, okay, you got to make sure that you're aware of all your surroundings at all times.
At all times.
Exactly, at all times, regardless of what field you're in, whether you're outside, inside, on the court, in the business world, whatever it is, you have to make sure that you're aware all the time. And and so little things like that. And again, I was a little kid, so it wasn't like today where, people shooting people. It was just, a little scrap and you're done. And me and dude, a few weeks later, we're friends again. But, it taught me to, 1, be aware of my surroundings. 2, that you got to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and whatever happens and takes place in life. And then as I transitioned and we moved, I was a Section 8 baby. So what happened when we moved, we got a better place and what we thought was a better place in Inglewood. We moved out there where I lived for 4 years. And that's actually eventually how I ended up going to Simeon, because we were living south at that time.
Okay.
And my older brother was at Robeson. He was playing football and basketball at Robeson, but he didn't want me to go to Robeson. He thought that once I started playing, that I'd be better suited under the tutelage of Bob Hambrick, of course.
Yeah. Right.
That all held to be so true. But, growing up in those two areas, Bill, did nothing but teach me, one, how to grind, taught me a work ethic, made me tougher, made me smarter, and made me more determined to really be better in life all around.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And, so you actually said a couple things. And again, the show is Life in Basketball. Again, taking real life situations and, analyzing basketball and putting them together.
Right.
You spoke of, as they say on the streets, keep your head on the swivel. You got to be able to see everything that's all around you. When we came up, we kind of said like, you got to be on your square, right? Times are changing, so language is changing. But, you had a fight and, then you basically slipped, and didn't really see it coming, and in life, things can happen to us right away. I always tell a story about the whole terminology blessed to ball, right? We're blessed to play basketball. We're blessed to live a certain life. We may think balling or whatever, but at any point in time, it can be taken away from you.
Right.
So just in an instant, now you got bum rushed, and now you had to try to, defend yourself from getting hurt, but also kind of keep your posture, and still be the young man that you are. You said, hey, yeah, I took it because at that time, it was a fight, maybe, an occasional bat or chain, but it wasn't as crazy as it is now. But then you said, like 3 weeks later, y'all were friends, which means at some point in time, correct me if I'm wrong, there had to be some type of communication. So if it's basketball or if it's life, you have to be able to communicate in order to express yourself and to sort things out and then make that adjustment from there. And I think, a lot of times with our youth, they, one, can't properly communicate. And then two, as I always say, I really think that the youth today have a voice, but their problem is because they can't communicate, which is problem number one. They can't properly communicate. So now people don't listen to them. They only hear them. And so because it may be frustration and anger, so how they say things, now I'm only hearing the tone. I'm not listening to you. So, in order to be an effective communicator, you have to be able to, one, understand how to talk to people. But then two, you want to get to the point to where they can hear what you're saying, because our youth today really have a lot of valid points if they're able to be listened to. But a lot of times they don't get the chance to be listened to because of the way that they say things or the things that they say. So now we already tuned them out. So after the fight, I'm pretty sure you and this gentleman, you was mad, pissed off for a couple weeks, whatever. But at some point in time, you had to communicate with him, and he had to do the same type of communication with you, and y'all squashed it, and you was back friends, correct?
No, you're 100% right, and you said a mouthful, bro. And I'm going to touch on that in several ways. But let's talk on my boy. His name was Jason, as a matter of fact. That was my dude. When we went, the rest of my time before we moved out to Inglewood, we became real cool. And it wasn't because, I whooped him or he retaliated against me. A lot of that is just like you said, because after the fact, and we were in the same classroom. It's not like today where you bounce around from classroom to classroom. You're in the same classroom. So eventually, both of us kind of had to let that thing go. We were friends before, so it wasn't like this was something new. We lived in the same building over in the Loomis Court apartment. So, we eventually became friends again, and you're right, it came through communication. But a big part of, and you touched on the today's youth not being able to communicate. And I'm a fan of social media. I think it's a great avenue for people to be able to express themselves. But the problem is today's youth have they don't talk anymore. I mean, it's either a tweet, it's a text, it's a snap. Now it's even worse because it's a Snapchat. So you're taking a picture of yourself that's gone in a few seconds. So you're really not talking to each other. And that's a big problem when it comes to just sitting back and being able to talk and communicate to people. But what it's also done is it's hurt the listeners because listeners don't know how to listen anymore. I mean, back in the day, you know how it was. We talked, people would listen. I mean, of course, you may have your differences. You may have a difference in opinion, but at least you were able to listen to one another. And today, like you said, we don't listen. And so it's today's youth are having a problem communicating. And since we're talking life and basketball, one of the things that kids don't get is if you don't know how to communicate in life, you won't be able to communicate on the basketball court. If you can't communicate on the basketball court, you won't be able to communicate in life. And this is one of the things that you should know. You coached, I coached, we both still coach in a way that you have to be able to talk. You have to be able to communicate, because if not, people will not understand you. They will not get what you're trying to say. This is where frustrations build up, and this is why we end up having issues. We end up having conflicts, so forth and so on. So with that in mind, this is why I do some of the things that I do, with Engage, which is the program that I run out of UIC, the community outreach program, where we go out into the schools to attempt to help kids in the CPS better educate themselves. We go out, we send tutors, which are our undergrad and graduate tutors, into the schools to be able to help these kids improve. And what we're doing now, I mean, we're sitting here, we're having a conversation. Whereas if you go and speak with some of these kids, and we go from 3rd to 6th grade, hopefully, as I stay on, we can advance this and grow it. And now we're covering up to 8th grade. And getting kids to better be able to express themselves, to be able to hold a conversation. This way, when the teacher is talking to you, you can better communicate and understand what he or she is talking about.
Exactly.
Which does better you in life in general.
Right. What's the name of that program again, D?
Called UIC Engage.
Engage. Okay.
Yeah, so if there's any elementary or middle school teachers that are listening, at the end, I'll give you all of my information, my UIC email address, as well as you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, because we would definitely come out and be able to help. And right now it's in an after school format. It's not costing the schools a dime. It's not costing the kids a dime, because of the Bomb Foundation, which is here in Chicago. They pay in order for us to be able to come out and do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and that's kind of, as we talked offline, kind of, similar to what my particular company does with, the character education. But like, these programs are so needed because teachers, I've been a teacher, my wife is a teacher. I've been doing this for decades, and teachers can't really teach. D, you there?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. All right. I don't know what happened.
Bro, it's called technology.
Yeah, the technology world. And, we get to talking about kids and veteran, coming up with solutions. And sometimes the universe don't want to put that out. Or maybe it's just, the powers that be, Zuckerberg or whoever. But, yeah, man, teachers can't teach because they're dealing with behavior problems, and as a dean and as a mentor for so long, I used to always say that we get mad at students or get mad at kids for doing things that they've never been taught how to do. Right. Now that's frustrating, because you looking like, man, but they never been taught that they shouldn't do that. So technically we shouldn't get mad, we should teach. But I mean, you and I, Matt, can go on and on and on about that. We're going to talk about the Engage program at UIC, a little bit further. If there's anybody that's listening, type Engage at UIC in the chat. Engage at UIC in the chat, and I'll post it up on the screen so everybody can see it. But now, so, you go out to Inglewood, you go to Simeon. 88, y'all won the city title your junior year, right?
Yes.
Okay, now who did y'all beat?
Man, you know what? That was a little while ago. I don't remember who. Actually, it was somebody from the team from the West Side. I can't remember who it was.
Okay. Now, was that? I don't think it was. Was that the same year? Rob, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Was that the same year that y'all beat South Shore in the Final Four? Because I had Lefty on the other day. Was it that year?
Man, I'm gonna tell you, Bill. You know how much basketball I played after that.
Okay, hey.
I wish I could think back and remember. You know what I do remember? I remember King kicking our ass my senior year because that's the one that hurt you the most. So right. I remember that one, but I don't remember and losing, of course, to St. Francis de Sales in overtime downstate because that's the one that caused the most pain.
Yeah.
I really can't remember. I think you're right though about beating South Shore in the semis. I can't remember who it was in the finals though. To be honest.
Now with I talked to Notary about it, and y'all kind of mirror with Coach Hambrick, Coach Collins.
Yes.
Talk to us about Coach Hambrick, man. For the people that don't understand, I mean, you and I talked about it. The kids nowadays, when I say the man, the myth, the legend, or if Notary come on here and say legend, or somebody else say that, like the basketball players today don't really know Deon Thomas, the basketball player. Like they, don't really understand history.
Right.
But so I know they don't understand Coach Hambrick, or maybe never even heard of him this generation. Right. Can you explain what Coach Hambrick meant to you? Like how he just morphed you?
That's easy, man, because I can talk about him from multiple directions. And what I mean by directions is, when you're growing up in the hood, the way I did, you start sometimes to venture off into the wrong directions.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was a single mom trying to raise 3 boys who worked 2 jobs, so she was never at home. So it was pretty much us really policing ourselves.
Okay.
And leaving 3 boys at home, that's not always a good thing. So when I did enroll at Simeon, and again, my older brother was like, you need to go there instead of going to Robeson. Like, because I didn't hoop until my freshman year.
Okay.
I played baseball up until then, and one day hooping with my brother, I was leaving a baseball game, and my brother needed an extra player out on the court, so I went and I played with those guys out on the court. And on the way home, he was like, bro, you're not playing baseball no more because you don't realize how good you are at basketball. So his quote to me was, and I remember we were sitting there and we were watching this on TV, he says, if Bob Hambrick can make Ben Wilson, he can make a Deon Thomas.
Wow. Wow.
So that day, that night, rather, we went in the house. We talked to my mom. That fall, we enrolled at Simeon. And again, Bob Hambrick was a disciplinarian first. He was a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. And, if you do a 1A, he was a teacher.
Right.
And a 1B, he was a mentor. So all of those things round, up in that little ball and that number one is what I would describe him as. So he took me, and here I am coming in as a 6'4" freshman who had never really played basketball. And and one of the great things he used to do, and I think this is one of the things that we're missing today, is he would always pair up a freshman with a senior. And that senior had to teach the freshman what it is to be a Simeon Wolverine. Now, I'm sure other coaches, exactly, and I'm sure other coaches did that at the time because we had a bunch of mentors and teachers at that time. And unfortunately, unlike today, we don't have as many as we had then.
Right.
And what he did, he paired me up with Irvin Small. So Irvin Small was really my first basketball teacher, of course, under the eye and the tutelage of Hambrick, because that's how he did things. So you ask what he meant to me? Everything, bro. I mean, because one, it could have been very easy for my life to have taken a different path if it wasn't for Bob Hambrick. Now, I'll say Bob Hambrick first, because without Bob Hambrick, really wouldn't have been no basketball.
Right.
Could have ended up being somewhere else. Could have ended up being a bust. Could have, as Larry Smith, who played at Illinois, and Marcus Liberty, being like, yeah, you're the big fundamental. I had that name, Tim Duncan.
Right. Okay.
So all of that came from Bob Hambrick. And, when it came to school and doing things the right way in the classroom, yes, my mother rode us like thoroughbred horses, but she's at work. You know what I'm saying? So your coach or your people at school, those are like your parents, and that's exactly how he treated each and every one of us that was on that team. He was tough. He had his paddle, and you knew if you messed up, that paddle was coming. So it kind of kept you in the right way, in the right line, and then doing the right things. And when I retired from playing, and I decided, a guy asked me to help him out. We were living in Florida at this time. And this guy asked me, hey, I've never coached. Will you come over to the high school and help me out? So I went over and I helped him out. And I called Coach Hambrick right after the end of that season. And I told him, I said, Coach, you know what? I thank you and I appreciate you. And I love you for everything that you were trying to teach us as kids. And I was like, and we didn't listen. We didn't get it. I was like, but thank you. You know what he told me? Very first thing he would say, boy, you must be coaching. And I was like, yes. I was like, yeah. I was like, I've decided to go in. I've decided to do this. And his thing was, he was like, Deon, he was like, I was only trying to give you guys the tools to be successful in life. And you mentioned what all of the things that a coach does. And that's really the main thing of what a good coach does.
Exactly.
We have some coaches that tear kids down and the kid never really resurfaces or finds his direction. And what a coach is supposed to do is to build you up, to give you that understanding and confidence that you could be and do anything that you wanted to do. Now, I'm never going to tell you that I knew my life would go the way it was, my basketball life, but I know it doesn't get started if it wasn't for Bob Hambrick. So he means a lot to me, man. I mean, even to this day, as a matter of fact, I just posted another, his anniversary of his passing was the other day, and and I posted something on Facebook saying basically that very first thing. He made more men. He made more men than he made basketball players.
And that's deep. That's a deep statement right there, man. He made more men than basketball players because everybody not going to go on and continue playing basketball. but
Yes.
everybody, God willing, will continue to get older and grow into a man. You said, obviously, the old school, the paddle and, those type of things. But when you call coaching, he said you must be coaching. We don't really understand. They say, my dad and mom used to always say hindsight is 2020. You don't really understand what a coach is doing until you are in a position of coaching or leadership. You really don't understand what your parents doing until you have a kid. You know what I'm saying? So, when you think back, I remember when I was first working, I used to work in a group home, and I was talking to a kid, and I remember to this day, I said something to him, and I literally backed up and just got quiet for a minute. I'm like, whoa, it was verbatim what my dad had said to me, and anybody that know my dad know, he the coolest dude walking, but I'm like, damn, I just said verbatim what he said to me to another kid. So we don't, always get it. And as coaches, we have to understand that the only thing that we can do is plant that seed, D. You know what I'm saying? We either plant that seed or try to water that seed based on what they got prior to coming to us. Especially, you talk about, us on the college level and things of that nature. But they might not get it until way after the fact. When they're done. That's big, man. So now I asked B this question. I know he didn't start wearing it until he got to Illinois. What was your number at Simeon?
My number was 50. Yeah, Mario Bailey wore 25.
Okay.
And actually, BB, he had, he knew Ben from earlier in his younger life. And to be honest, he kind of looked like Benji a little bit too. So that 25 kind of fit.
Okay. So you were actually named Illinois Mr. Basketball, so when we talk about legend, and people may not understand, you named Mr. Basketball of Illinois. You went on to the McDonald's All-Star game that year. Mm-hmm. And I know that you say that you have played, probably forgot more basketball than people nowadays can remember. But I don't know if you remember some of the people that you played with in that McDonald's All-Star game. I'm just naming some off for the people that's watching or the people that'll check out, the replay to get them to understand. But George Lynch, Bob Hurley, Jim Jackson, Kenny Anderson, Tracy Murray, Allen Houston, and then both of my boy, Daryl Cunningham, to name a few. That was a star-studded McDonald's All-American team, man.
Hold on, Bill. You leaving out the biggest of them all and probably the best. Don't leave out big Shaquille O'Neal.
Shaq Diesel. There you go.
Can't leave out the big Aristotle.
Right.
No, but man, it was an honor. I mean, and again, I don't get to those games or to that level if it's not for Bob Hammer. But I also don't get there if it's not for Cody Butler. I don't get there if it's not for Jackie Crawford, Mario Bailey, Eric Askew, and Avery Stallings, Al Redmond. I can go down the line of those guys that was on the teams for me from my freshman year all the way through my senior year. Because, I know in basketball, you're not on an island. You're playing with 5 other people out there. So, I was, I was in 1989, I was Mr. Basketball in the state of Illinois, Parade All-American, which the Parade magazine, I don't even think it's around anymore, but
no.
It was big back then. I was Parade All-American. I was number 3 in the nation, depending on the publication, behind Shaquille O'Neal and Kenny Anderson, and went on to be, 4-time All Big Ten selection. Leading scorer still in the history there. But when I left, I was a shot blocker and rebounder and a host of other things. But, a lot of that stuff comes, again, yes, off of my talent, but it doesn't happen if it's not for my teammates and the guys that I'm playing with. and that goes, a lot of what this is about basketball and life. A lot of those things and a lot of things where people, especially kids, need to understand today is no one gets to anywhere by themselves.
There you go. There you
So
go.
it's
There you
extremely important to relish those relationships that you have with your friends, your teammates, because those are all the people that are helping you to get to where you want to be. I mean, I remember when Drake came out with that song, "Started from the Bottom, Now I'm Here."
Yeah.
He needs to, and I'm sure he understands this, but it took a whole lot of people in order to help him from the bottom to get to where he is. And that's the same thing in life, and that's the same thing in basketball. And what those guys did for me, and no, we don't get to see each other as much, but man, we stay in contact on Facebook. You know, when Kobe's kids or Jackie's kids or somebody else's kids do something, I'm right there, and Avery's kids are right there to edge them on, because I don't get to do what I did or see all that I've seen if it wasn't for those guys as well.
And it's a brotherhood. I mean, if you ask any basketball player, it's not always, the game. I got a chapter in my book, Understanding Life Through the Game of Basketball, that basically the games are won in practice. And practice most times are for the coaches. The games are for the players, because if you practice the right way, the games are now fun and it's not as hard as practice is. But if you ask any player, the thing that they miss most about being part of that team is the brotherhood. The times in the locker room, the times on the bus, the times in the hotel, getting up, late, early mornings, whatever it is, like that's what you miss most. And, it's a old terminology in basketball that we all use called KYP, know your personnel. And be it in life or be it on the basketball court, you have to know your personnel. And you just touched on it. You knew and you respected all those guys and what position they not only played, but what they held with you and with the, particular teams, be it whichever team you were on. And, especially as a big guy.
Oh, yeah.
It's something about a relationship with a point guard and a big man if they're being taught the right way, because, those are the bookends. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure that you knew at some point in time, I don't care if you ever scored a point, if you ain't touched that thing, you was going to start blocking shots, you was going to start rebounding, you was going to start playing defense. I mean, that's just human nature, So I used to tell my guards, and, we talk, we'll get into it in a minute, feed the big guy, and I just make him feel like he's part of the other four, because he's doing or she's doing something that's really the glue of the whole team. So, you talked about it, man. Know your personnel, that's big. It's not you if it's not them, the same way U of I, you go to, U of I, you kind of touched on it, the all-time leading scorer at 2,129 points. Some people may not think that's a lot of points over a 4-year span, but that's, about 500 points a year. And I just named all the people or some of the people in the McDonald's All-Star game. So like you played with when it was a nice amount of players often going to the NBA. The game wasn't as watered down as it is now. Let's keep it real. You know what I'm saying? For you to amass that number of points and it still stands, that's huge. And, I don't want to leave off anybody, but again, from your time at U of I, you play with, and, these are some people that, I know. And even when they were in high school, Andy Kaufman, that was like, kind of like.
He averaged 44 points a game in high school.
Huh?
He averaged 44 points a game in high school. I mean. Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like Andy Kaufman was like Mr. Robot. Like he, it was almost nothing that he couldn't do. You had, my man, my coach, from, not from Rich Central, but went to Rich Central with Kendall and but Gene Cross, he was our coach at UIC. He was there. Will Tuttle, man, people forget how deadly of a shooter Will Tuttle was. And he was out from our way. I'm not sure. I think like Lincoln Way or Frankfurt somewhere. You had Rob Bennett, Shelly Clark. What is it? Jerry. Who else played? Jerry.
Kewan Garris.
Right. And Kewan. Now Kewan came your senior year, but he started, right?
He did. Actually, when Kewan came in, he did start his freshman year. He actually broke my freshman all-time scoring record. So,
okay.
Kewan was some real big. Kewan and Jerry Hester were really big gets for us. Jerry Hester was out of Peoria, so that was the beginning.
And not the football Hester.
Huh?
Right. No. I was saying not the football Hester.
Oh no.
Devin Hester. About Jerry Hester. Right. Yeah. But, and I mean, Jerry came from a great program.
Yes. And then we had some really good guys that were from downstate as well. I mean, we had Tommy Michaels, the 6'8", 6'9" shooter. We had T.J. Wheeler that was from way down in Old Buckner, Illinois. Richard Keene out of Collinsville, who was another great shooter. I mean, we had some really good teams. Now, coming in right after that flying the line 19, we had a little bit of a letdown, of course, with the whole Bruce Pearl thing. So we didn't have that same level of talent. And then I had to sit out my freshman year. So, the university made me sit out. So I was not able to play with Marcus Liberty, Kendall Gill, Steve Bardo, Andy Petty, Andy Kaufman was on that team. So I really missed, probably another trip, I think, and I believe another trip back to the Final Four with those guys, having to sit out that first year. But, with some really good guys, there were some really good players in the state. And my freshman year, we had a good year, with Andy Kaufman. Andy Petty was also on that team. He went to Kankakee. Larry Smith from Alton was on that team. I don't know if you remember Rennie Clemens.
Yeah, Rennie.
Springfield. So we still had a solid team, and we played extremely well. And like I interviewed Coach Henson on my podcast, The Fadeaway, and the first thing he said was, Deon, we didn't have as much talent as you, but because of you and because of the toughness and the grit that those guys played with, we were always in the game. No one ever blew us out the gym. And that was the difference with us. But, yeah, man, I had a great 4 years at U of I. And like you said one thing that sits with me in a pleasant place, but it also hurts. When you leave, what you miss is that camaraderie, those friends, those guys you went to battle with. It was the same thing when I left Simeon to go to Illinois. It was the same thing when I left Illinois, to go play professionally. Right.
So now you played 3 years or 4?
I played 4 years at Illinois.
Okay. And now the thing that stood out to me as I was doing my research, getting ready for the show, what people miss is during that time, it wasn't like one and dones. Like teams were able to grow together,
Right.
And, it was a certain level of respect for one another, but also just a certain level of loyalty, and, you all knew that you had to stick together. So again, just touching on life, the loyalty is gone nowadays, it's really not as much of a lack of respect for individuals, less known a lack of respect for the game. I talk about it all the time, man, and I ref now too. And I find myself doing more coaching than I do reffing, but I try to do it in a non-biased way. I try to get a player from each team and try to give them some, say, a free throw, a dead ball to help them both. But the level of disrespect that I see from players now for the game, just with some of the things that they do. And I know, the athleticism, but just some of the things, shooting from half court and all that. I tell a kid, I said, man, if you shoot from half court again, I'm throwing you out the game. And he looked at me. I said, I don't care what your coach say. I'm throwing you out the game. You don't do that. It just respect the game. As I said, if you take care of that little orange ball, it'll take care of you. I know some people might think, hey, man, if they can do it, do it. But it was the way I was brought up, the way I was taught the game. It's a certain way that you have to respect the game. So moving on.
Let me jump in on that point because I think you made a great point there. Because this is one of those things that translates, again, not just to basketball, but in life. I think a lot of people and a lot of these kids nowadays don't have self-respect. Right. So if you don't have self-respect, it's next to impossible for you to respect something or someone else. I mean, just think about it. When we were younger, we would never walk around with our pants hanging down around our ankles.
Right.
It just wouldn't happen. One, because, it was up to us as you walked out of your house to really carry yourself in a certain way. That doesn't happen nowadays. And then, like you said, you pull kids to the side and you teach them and you give them a little something other than them just out there bouncing the basketball. What these kids have done today, and not just these kids, what some of the AAU coaches and some of the high school coaches have done, is they've taken away the thought and idea of how to play basketball, and they've made it such an individual basketball game that guys don't play as a team. They don't respect their teammates. They don't respect their coaches because they don't respect themselves. I got on some kids when I was coaching at the college level about walking in the gym and walking on the floor with flip-flops on. I'm like, bro, you don't ever walk on this court without your shoes laced up, ready to play.
Sacred ground.
And that's how we were, when we were coming up. And again, I didn't start playing when I was 7 years old like most of these kids today. I started playing when I was 15 years old. But what I learned from day one, from Irvin Small, from Bob Hambrick, from my brother Derek, is you respect this game. And anytime you walk on the court, you better have your shoes on because somebody might challenge you to play. You better be ready to step up and protect your name. This is what these kids are missing today because we started giving them a name when they're in 7th grade. Fifth grade, exactly. I meant to say 7 years old. I didn't mean to say 5th grade. I meant to say 7 years old. We started tagging kids as the next Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe when they barely can walk and chew bubble gum yet. And I think that's where these kids have fallen off because they've forgotten, they've lost the process. No, I ain't gonna say they've lost. They were never taught the process of being great. They were taught the process of doing it one-on-one. Like when I train kids, and I'm sure you'll love this. I tell them, if you can't beat your defender in 2 dribbles, you need to pass the basketball.
Hey, it's such a lost art. I was talking with Chris Harris Tuesday, and like Chris, when he was in South Suburban, in like 19'8" and in, he was like 80 to 85%. 19'9" and beyond, couldn't throw water in the lake, right? But he understood what he could do. And so growing up, like, me and my close brother, John L., right? Sloan, we all, and I got to get Sloan on the show. He keep messing around. But we used to always say, pros have a mid-range game.
Yes.
And if you can't make that move in 2 dribbles and get up that shot and lose the defender in 2 dribbles to get up that shot, you not going to go on to the next level. It don't matter where it at, where it is. All that, Coach told me a long time ago. Actually, Coach P at South Sub Pagani. He said, Carville, and he was my coach at Michael Jordan camp back in like '88, right? He said the worst thing they ever did to a basketball is put air in it. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's like, damn, when it was just a little peach, ball, with the peach basket, it wasn't no air in it. So what did they have to do? They had to move and they had to be creative. It's not a lot of creativity, speaking to your point. So, I'm the same way. If you can't shot fake and make that move and counter move in 2 dribbles, you probably ain't gonna do a whole lot. It's so simple, but it's the hardest thing to do because it's a mindset shift. You know what I'm saying, Coach?
Yep, I sure do. That's what I say. Best thing you do is to keep it simple.
Yeah, yep, keep it simple. So, you go on all-time leading score. Now you touched on it. So for anybody that know you, I'm not sure who's on, most people may not know you. You spoke on the Bruce Pearl. What I don't like is when people talk about Deon Thomas and University of Illinois, one of the first things that come up, it's either all-time leading scorer and then Bruce Pearl all-time leading scorer. They don't really get into all of the, the things that you all were able to do as a group those 4 years. But so,
Right.
The backstory of it is that, Bruce Pearl was at Iowa at that particular time. You were heavily recruited. He called himself having a recorded call with you, with him saying that you were offered gifts and cars and all that to come to U of I, and he turned it into the NCAA because obviously, at that point in time where Roy Battle, I think, and BJ Armstrong, all of those dudes at Iowa. So it was, still heated, a good Big Ten rivalry, and it's even better now when those 2 teams meet because of the history, right? Brian Notary told us about how the NCAA had to change their rules because, he was able to get the rule change, and they labeled him Prop 48, which a lot of people don't know. But speaking on your thing, that Illinois-Iowa matchup, now kids coming in school, they may know, hey, this is a big game, but they don't really understand why. So he turned the tape into the NCAA. They did an investigation. I think you all wound up getting, they didn't do anything with you, but gave the school sanctions, couldn't, have postseason play. Coach Collins and Bruce Pearl, they don't, it's kind of like the same magnet. They don't even, can't even come close together.
They repel. Well, let me tell you.
Can you speak on that?
I'll tell you a little bit about that. And
okay,
like you said, I was heavily recruited coming out of Simeon. My top 4 or 5 teams was UCLA, Arizona, Minnesota, Illinois, and Iowa. So I would have to say, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois were my top choices. But of course, as that went on, and we're going to talk about the tape, which, to be honest, was some BS. But what took place was we were on the phone one night, and Pearl is, hey, I heard that, I got information that Illinois offered you $80,000 and a blazer to come to Illinois. Right. I will double that if you come to Iowa. And this is on everything, Carvel. I mean, God can strike me down right now as I sit in this chair if I'm lying.
Right.
We'll double that, but we don't have a deal with Chevy. We got to deal with Ford. I can give you a Ford Probe like BJ's driving. I say, well, Coach, I say, first of all, that never happened. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I got a great source that said it happened. Coach, did not happen. Literally, I BS you not, bro. This went on for 5 minutes. This happened. No, it didn't happen. This happened. It didn't happen. I say, all right, Coach. I say, you know what? If you believe this happened, then okay, fine. That's what happened. That's his tape recording. So, and he did. His college roommate was an investigator for the NCAA at the time. So what Bruce Pearl did was doctored out all that other stuff.
Right.
The constant denials, his offer to double that. He doctored all of that out and had a little snippet of me saying, well, yeah, this is what happened. That got blew out of the water. Of course, Steve Beckett was my attorney at the time. And Steve went in because he knew the truth. But we've been in many interviews, and I've talked to him, and he told him, Bruce Pearl and the NCAA, give me the undoctored tape.
Right.
Give me the undoctored tape. Give me the undoctored transcripts. Of course, they couldn't produce that because there was none, because this, was a BS recording of what he did. And so this is why when they went on through this whole investigation, the NCAA came out and they had to clear us. They cleared Coach Collins and I. Now, you're right. They nailed us with lack of institutional control, which was a bit heavy-handed for some other stuff that had nothing to do with me and Coach Collins.
Right.
And we were banned from going to the tournament for 2 years, and as well as had a loss of scholarships. And you brought up Will Tuttle. Will Tuttle was a walk-on the team with me.
Right.
He ended up earning a scholarship later on because you're right. Will could play some basketball, and he was a tough kid.
Right.
But those were, that's the reality of that stuff. And Bruce Pearl knew he was wrong. Iowa knew he was wrong. That's why they fired him. And then he ended up going over to, I think it was Wisconsin, Green Bay. And then this is where he and Coach Collins would bump into each other because now Coach C was at UIC.
Right. It was actually Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And what happened was a lot of people don't realize and don't understand. Bruce Pearl bumped into Coach Collins, and we were at the Final Four in New Orleans, and he apologized to him for doing that dirt. The last day before I was leaving the Final Four at that time, my wife and I were walking down the street, and Bruce Pearl came running out of a restaurant. It was actually Emerald Lagasse's restaurant in New Orleans. He came running out, was like, Deon, please, can I talk to you? And he apologized. He was like, I was overzealous. I was young. I was overzealous. You would have been the biggest recruit that I had signed, but I want to apologize to you. And like I told him, I said, Coach, you know what? That was over 20 years ago.
Right.
Like I've let that go. I'm beyond that right now. But I will tell you this, that apology is about 20 years too late.
Right. Right.
But that's really the backstory to that. And it'll be in my new book, my Fadeaway book. When it comes out, there'll be a part in there because I'm breaking my book down into 4 quarters. It's going to cover my young life being on the Village and in Inglewood. It'll cover my high school life. It'll cover my college life. So, of course, that's a big portion of my high school and college life. And then it's going to cover my professional life and what I'm doing now after retirement. But you said something at the beginning, and then this is what I've had to come to grips with is anytime you mention Deon Thomas, Bruce Pearl is always going to be mentioned. Every time you mention Jimmy Collins, Bruce Pearl is going to be mentioned. And vice versa. You mention him, we get mentioned.
Right.
And my grandmother told me something before she passed away. She says, Deon, you have to forgive him. She was like, because if you don't forgive him, he retains power over you. And, I'm from the Village, bro. Right. I ain't never been give power to nobody over me.
Hey. Scabs, huh? Scabs, baby.
Exactly. Scabs.
Hey, so the viewers, you are getting a snippet of the book. So, if you like this interview, just imagine how great the book is going to be, hard to put down, getting those stories. I actually remember that Final Four. I love always see where Deon went. But I'm going to tell a story anyway. I remember going to, the Final Four with, I normally go every year, and me, Deon, and Coach Collins was walking that year, and we were walking in the convention center. And at that particular time, we was walking with Coach Huggins, Huggy. And, we were talking about kind of the Bruce Pearl incident and just some other things. Bob Huggins was talking about how when he had Kenyon Martin and, all of those guys. So for the basketball lovers, basketball fans, you've never been, to a Final Four, you definitely want to go. You definitely want to feel the rich history of the people that are, involved, and it's not so much, to be able to, touch and suck up and hobnob. Deon, I was talking about that time in New Orleans because I remember me, you, and Coach C was walking, and we were actually walking with Huggy. Remember, we were walking with Bob Huggins, and we were, just, talking about, just the Pearl thing about when Huggy had Kenyon and all them. People don't really remember when Bob Huggins was at Cincinnati. Like, they used to practice with football helmets and shoulder pads on. But people that are in, if you don't get a chance to come to the Final Four, I see that Trey Webb, is on now. Trey, what up, man? Just to be able to get great information from different coaches. But now, you spoke of your grandmother, and, Robert Plant, say that, she told you the truth. Tracy say that she told you the truth. Can you let everybody know, really, we talk about this Bruce Pearl thing, but your grandmother kind of gave you that push it was something about, if talking to Coach Collins, talking to you, it was something about, I believe, when Coach Collins came to sit in y'all living room. And, me and Notary talked about it, like that's what Coach Collins was great for. He's a personable coach. He loves people. I talk about how, he's, a touching coach. He will put hands on you, but in a good way. Now, when Coach Collins came and sat in y'all house, can you explain kind of what went on, with your grandmother really wanting you to go there, or, how she took to Coach Collins?
Well, let me start off by saying and then explaining the relationship between my grandmother and I. My mother was young when she had my older brother and I. My mother was 15 when she had my older brother, 19 when she had me. So we lived a lot, and we spent a lot of that time with my grandmother, of course, because my mom, one, had to finish school, two, now she's working all the time. So a lot of that time was spent with my grandmother. So my grandmother to me was more like a mother than a grandmother. And a lot of the life lessons that I live by and who made me as a person come through her. So she, meant a whole lot to me. And anybody that knows me knows that. Mm-hmm. So she was also one of those people, and this is what the great grandparents are, man. They read people, and they read people really well.
Right.
So it wasn't just, when we were going through the recruiting process, she was really quiet. She'd sit back and she'd observe people. So I was really kind of left to this on my own recognizance of filling out schools and filling out people. But with her, she immediately, from day one, was like, I don't like him, meaning Bruce Pearl. Mm. I don't like him. I don't trust him. I don't trust his eyes. She loved Coach Haskins, who was up at Coach Clem, who was at Minnesota at the time.
Right.
And she loved Coach C. And it was really because of, and like you said, you play for him, you know him. It's really because of the person he is. He comes across as extremely genuine. He's extremely genuine. He's extremely easy to talk to. I think he cares about his players. I know he cared about me, but I think he cared about every player that he recruited. Not all maybe on the same level, but you definitely knew as a player, if he was recruiting you, that he had your back. And that's the way I felt with Coach. But I remember sitting in the living room with my grandma rather, and I was like, Brandon, where do you want me to go to school? When we were coming down to decision time. Right. She was like, UCLA is too far away. I'll never get to see you. Same thing with Arizona. She says, Coach Clem is really nice, but it's too cold up there. I'm not coming to Minnesota to watch you play. And then she was like, and like I told you, I don't like Bruce Pearl. So I don't want you to go there. I'd feel better if you went to Illinois. One, because I know that Jimmy, meaning Coach Collins, Jimmy Collins, would take care of you and that you would not have any problems. That if you were hurt or you were something like this, which was, of course, the biggest concern of my grandmother was, and anybody that knows her or knew her would tell you, and this is the way I was raised, wouldn't accept a dime if you did not earn it. Your job is to go out and earn what it is that you keep. Just like it says in the Bible, you reap what you sow. And that's how we were raised. That's how my grandmother raised me. And that's how I am. That's why that whole Iowa thing is some BS. You know, I remember, and I'll tell you this, we used to have holes in our roof, bro. And when it would rain, I mean, you'd hear the rain coming through the roof, you know, hitting in them pots. And it sounded like a jazz band was going on.
Right.
But she would have never taken a dime. And so, like I said, that was who I learned from. And that's where my character comes from. And that's why all of that was, you know, a complete farce. Right. But, you know, it is what it is. But she loved Coach T. And like you said, Coach, and this is where I think a lot of coaches today miss out on. You have to be great in that living room. Coach was great in that living room. One, because I think he was genuine enough that parents and kids understood that, you know, he was there for you. And that's how I felt. And that was really the reason I chose to go to Illinois, because like you said, there were a bunch of other schools that were out there.
Right. So now, you know, you leave Illinois. When people don't know, you was a 28th draft pick, you know, with Dallas. Now you chose to go to Europe. Now I'm going to give the spiel first. Now I'm going to come back and ask my question. You wind up, just some stats, you know, you wind up, you know, you went over to, you won an Israeli championship, you won an Israeli Cup, and then you won a Euro League 2 times. Now my first question is, you opted to go to Europe for the kids nowadays, and we talk about AU, you know, people that have that high hopes. That's obviously one for anybody that plays. I want to go to the NBA, but the I coach junior college. You know, we'll get into that in a minute. You know, we go as we winding down. You have to use basketball for what it's for, and again, it's a vehicle. So if you couldn't go, or, you know, you was in the NBA, but you chose to go to Europe, and it actually, from my reading and my research, they actually really kind of classify you as like one of the greatest European basketball players to ever come over there and play. And like, that's huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, for, you know, so when me and Notary say legend, people don't really understand, you know, Deon Thomas. And, you know, I can, you know, pat your back because I know that, you know, you're a humble guy. You probably won't do it. But they label you as one of the greatest players to come over to Europe and play ever. What caused you to say, you know what, I ain't gonna try to do this NBA. I'm gonna go over here to Europe, you know, getting back to what you said, you know, with your granny. You know, you work for everything that you get. You know, yeah, you could have went to the NBA, sat on the bench, you know, did some of those things. I don't want to answer your question because I don't know how you're going to answer it. But you go over to Europe and you make a name for yourself. For the kids nowadays that, you know, want to go pro, man, I ain't going over to this country or going over to this country. Can you explain kind of the thought process of the two different leagues of NBA and Europe and why you chose it?
Well, let me start off from the beginning with why I chose to go to Europe instead of staying with Dallas. My senior year in high school, John B. McClendon, which a lot of the young people won't know, but he is the creator of today's basketball, basically. Before John McClendon, you know, basketball was slow paced. It was pass here. There was no fast breaks. But when he started coaching, he sped the game up. So we had the opportunity, Simeon High School and Simeon's boys team and Marshall's girls team had the opportunity to go and play in Amsterdam. And that was through John B. McClendon. He took us over there. We played. We were there, if I believe, like 10 days. So we played a lot of different teams over there, all on the professional level, actually. And,
Okay.
we went over there and basically, bullshit you not, and dominated. And
Okay.
I won, the MVP in the majority of those games. But it wasn't the basketball that I really enjoyed and had a good time with. It was the people. It was the culture. It was just how the difference between the way people lived over there, how relaxed it was, how community and family and people oriented that they were, that I really enjoyed. So fast forward to my senior year, I get drafted by the Dallas Mavericks. My agent is in the process of working out the contract with Dallas, and in came a contract from Spain. Now this contract was, equal to as far as money, but it exceeded what I would have made as a rookie in Dallas at that time, because, I didn't have to pay taxes. There was no living expenses that I would have to pay for, because in Europe they cover your housing and all of that stuff. So I don't have to pay all that. So all my money I'm getting is all of my money, basically.
Exactly. Right.
So, right. So with that in mind, and with the fact that I really enjoyed the European experience when we were there, I talked to Coach Collins, and Coach C was like, Deon, it doesn't matter where you play. What's important is at the end of the road, can you do what it is that you want to do in life and not what you have to do? And that's almost verbatim of what he told me.
Right.
And another thing, that kind of sets, me apart, I believe, from a lot of players is when I was coming up, Bill, I used basketball, to me, was only a tool to get to college. It was a tool to get, further in life and not not have to stay in the circumstances that I was in. So it wasn't an NBA or bust for me. I wasn't so focused on that was the only thing. So after my conversation with Coach Collins, it made that decision easy. I was like, I can go over here, I can play, I can earn a really good living, I can see the world, I can experience things that most people will not experience. And if I choose to come back, then I can come back.
Right.
And, because like I said, I was playing well enough that it wasn't if I came back to Dallas and said, okay, well, you know what, I'm ready to come back, that they wouldn't assign me.
Right.
I was a 7-time All-Star when I was over there. I was one of the leading scorers and I was the leading scorer and rebounder for every team, but basically one of the top 5 leading scorers or rebounders in the league. But when I got over there, to be honest, bro, I fell in love with it. I love living in Spain. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the food and all of that came with it. And then I eventually ended up meeting my wife. Now, my wife is Israeli.
Right.
So it was a hop, skip, and a jump to get to Israel and for her family to come see us. And then we were back home here in the summer.
Right.
So once we got married, and once my oldest daughter was born, and then my youngest daughter came afterwards. So my oldest daughter was born in Spain.
Okay.
And then my youngest daughter was born in Israel. But once the kids started coming, it's like, okay, you know what? Let's stay here because really close to her family, and my family spread out, but I was able to bring them over to see us. So now my mom is getting to experience Spain in these different places. My younger brother has been to Spain. He's been to Israel. He's been to Greece. So my kids have been to Bulgaria. So these are actually opportunities that I don't know if I would have gotten if I had stayed in the NBA. So I'm blessed and thankful for that opportunity to be able to have done that. Now, you touched on the young fellas today. First of all, I want to touch on, and you and I are basically, we're teachers. We're teachers, we're mentors, we're coaches.
Right.
One of the things that bothers me is, so many of the guys that played for me at Lewis and Clark and that played for me at UIC, they think this thing is easy. Okay, if I don't go to the NBA, I'm gonna go to Europe.
Right.
And I tell them, I'm like, bro, real talk, that's one of the hardest fucking things to do in the world. I was like, I'm like, first of all, the NBA is the top of the top. You have to be extremely gifted. You have to be the top 1% of the top 1% in order to get in and make it and stay in that NBA. Now, when you're coming and you're thinking about Europe, you're in competition with the whole world for very few positions, and you're in competition with the Americans that either one made the choice that I did to go over because they wanted to go over, or two that were not good enough to be in the league, but they're still great athletes, great players, and everything else. So now you got to worry about that. So this goes back to what you talking about, and this is why I made that. It's to tell these kids or anybody that's listening, whether it's their parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, tell them kids to concentrate on those books because it ain't that easy. Now, can they do it? I think anybody can do anything if you put in the work. You respect the process, you respect the grind, and you put your work in. But for me, the best experience and one of the best things I've ever done in my life, and I tell people this all the time, and I mean it. If I drop dead today, I'm gonna go home happy because I've lived a life that not many people get to live, man, and I'm blessed and I'm thankful for it.
And I said it at the top of the show, I thank you. I echo Robert's comments. I thank you for sharing that, man. But, and I talked about it at the top of the show, that little orange ball can take you places that you would have never thought. Not only did it take you, but it's taking your kids, taking your mom, your brother, so because they were able to receive a coattail blessing, basically, from the things that you had. And not only all the things that you talked about, but I tell players all the time, you have the good stories. But when you talk about going overseas, man, you got the horror stories of dudes who, get their passports taken, team cut them, they can't come home. Or they cut you, now they send you back home, or, they owe you months and months of money. Like, it's not that easy. And, people just say, this is what I want to do. But, again, if you don't have that intestinal fortitude and that mindset right, it can break you. I hear, me and Joe Chapman, that played at Marquette, we used to talk, or still talk, but I remember Joe telling me, he said, man, you got to think about it, Vale. He said, now I'm over in a whole nother country, and, we got practice 2 times a day. He said, when you go overseas, you find out who you are as a man, because you have so much free time, so much idle time. And it's not like you here. You can go to the club, you can hang out with buddies, whatever. You don't have family, friends. You can't be on the phone. Then the time difference is totally messed up. So I can't call you from home because it's probably 1, 2 a.m. So he was saying, like, literally he had roughly 18, 19 hours of me time. And after a while, there's only so many books and so much stuff that you can read and do. And so you have to find yourself and be able to deal with that. And that stood out to me. I'm like, people don't understand all those other things that, that does, come along with it. But, I thank you for sharing that, man. That's great. Now you talk about Lewis and Clark. Here's where we kind of formed our relationship. On the level that it is now, I can text you, you can text me, even though we haven't talked for, a couple months or whatever. I would come up to, even when you was at UIC, see you or whatever. But when you was at Lewis and Clark, you wound up getting a job at Lewis and Clark, after you retired from playing. And then you were the athletic director as well as the basketball coach. What people don't know is that, like, you coached how you played, and I think that's where some of your frustration may have came in at, as you said, because they thought it was easy. But you basically took a team that I would say, and I can say because maybe you can't say it, but they were really like a nobody, and like you had them dudes nationally ranked, like throughout the time that you were there, and you was in Region 24, like y'all was in a tough. Actually, y'all was in a split region, right?
Yeah, we were in two. We were in Region 24 and Region 12.
Right. So y'all had it on both ends, and for people that don't know, Region 24 is the down state part of Illinois, and Region 12 is what, like the St. Louis,
Missouri. Yeah.
And that was back when the St. Louis community colleges were like Chicago city colleges. They had four schools, so it just wasn't that one. So night in and night out, and you were ranked nationally in the country with those guys, and I remember our conversation. You called me, you said, Vel, look, like I got a lot of Chicago kids, and I want them, and here's maybe where conversations with your grandmother and everything comes back into play. He was like, I want them to be able to come back home and at least be able to play one time for their family. And that's where we kind of built our relationship, because it was like, okay, cool. Y'all come. I was at Truman at that point in time. Okay, y'all come. We gonna play. That's fine and dandy, because it'll be good for us. A program just starting out. You can bring your kids back home, and actually, we had damn near packed house, because I think y'all might have been like 5th or 6th in the country, and I mean, y'all were good, but, your players, as you said, thought it was easy. They didn't understand the determination and the heart of a Coach Bailey team. Like, we wasn't going to quit, and I hyped it up all week. Like, man, like it's like we playing a legend, Chicago legend. He's coaching, the coach of Chicago legend, playing his team. They coming back to Chicago. They coming back to show out for their family. They ranked in the country. They coming to beat y'all brains out. And I think you might have had a 6'10". You had a real big dude that point in time too. But I always used to preach, you can't beat what you can't catch. And people that know me and know, like, we ran for fun. You talk about, John McClendon, and I told Tree, I said, like, Coach Greats from, West Side Malcolm X, he actually, I have it in my laundry room still, the John McClendon book, so, we used to do the 3-on-3 full court, no dribbles, and, and so as the game went on, I believe that we just wore y'all down, because they like, man, these little dudes just won't quit. And, I think that helped Charles. I think y'all wound up going to nationals that year, and I would like to say that game maybe made your coaching a little bit easier for that season, because they understood the things that you was telling them that they didn't think they had to listen to, because they thought that they was that good. You know what I'm saying?
I'll tell you this, and I hate you had to bring that up, but deservedly so. But no, you're 100% right, bro. You did what I did. And I told those guys every day while we were in practice, bro, I said, you got to understand, these kids are from where I'm from. These kids are where you from. They're not going to lay down for you. I don't care. And you're right. I had a 6'10" kid. I had a 6'9" kid. I had 3 kids that were above 6'6", and then I had, and then my best player, who went on to play in Europe he just retired from playing over in Europe. So he was over there 10 years. I mean, this kid was, if it wasn't for him having to go JUCO, was definitely high mid-major. So we had a whole lot of talent on that team. But you're 100% right. And I think this is what a lot of guys today don't understand. And I tell people, and I tell coaches players all the time, you fear no one, but you respect everybody. And that's where I think, we came into there, and then they saw you guys warming up down on the other end, and they like, look at all these little dudes, and what happened? It was exactly what I told them was going to happen. You're not going to stop playing. You're going to keep scrapping. You're going to keep going. And if you don't, then at the end of the day, you're going to get your ass whooped. Because like Coach always said, and you heard you heard this analogy is hard work beats talent. When talent don't work hard,
talent don't work hard. Yep.
And that's exactly what happened to us. And I'll tell you this. I'm 0 for 2. I was 0 for 2 coming up in here in the city to play. In both years I was ranked. You know,
right.
And I told them, I'm like, and this is why I wanted to come up here and play, because I wanted guys to understand, you know, these guys are playing with everything that they have, every bit of their soul. And if you don't learn how to compete like that, it doesn't matter what I draw up, X's and O's. None of that matters, because the same way you talk about, you know, basketball is life, that's the same way I coach. That's what I tell them. Right. If you half-ass here, you're going to half-ass in life. If you don't get every bit here, you're not going to give every bit here. And that's what I think, and you're right, I went to the national tournament both of those years, and I think that's what those guys had to learn, that, hey, we got to leave it out here. We got to show respect to whomever it is, no matter how big, how small, or anything else. Yep. And, you know, I didn't win those national championships. One I lost in a double overtime, and the other one we got knocked out going in the Elite Eight. But you know, people don't normally get there, especially not Lewis and Clark.
Right. Well, you know, and it's an old saying, winners win, man. You know what I mean? You've been a winner, high school, college, pros, and even coaching. You know, so I don't know if Tracy is still on, you know, Trey Webb, but, you know, I used to tell, you know, I tell players, it's two types of players. Those that want to play and those that have to play. And I'm saying, like, you know, Tracy Webster, you know, coming from Harvey and, you know, putting himself, you know, in a situation that he's in now, you know, have coached, you know, all over the country, or, you know, players like you know, but the players that want to play are the players that go play when they get a chance to, when the gym is open, when it's practice time. The players that have to play, they understand that they have to put themselves in a better situation than they are now. So, like, I have to go to the gym, or I have to get some weights in, you know, because I have to put myself and my family in a better situation. And I think you're able to see the difference in those type of individuals. It is not just basketball, but that student or whatever it is that you do, those people that want to do things and those people that have to do things, you know, but you had a great career, you know, short career at Lewis and Clark. You wound up going to UIC, you know, kind of speeding it up. You know, you were there for a while, you know, you left, you know, you're still at UIC now doing your Engage program. Real quick, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Coach. I appreciate all your time. I respect people's time, and we, you know, then already went, you know, about an hour and a half. I'm pretty sure, man, you can go on and on. Let's talk about your podcast, Sports Network, Painless Podcast Network. Tell us about your podcast, Coach.
Well, it's called the Fadeaway, and I love the name I picked because that was my favorite shot. You know, okay. The Fadeaway, and what the Fadeaway will cover. Later on, we'll start talking more high school basketball in the city, because one of my co-hosts, Eric Schmidt, covers high school basketball in the city for CSN, the Chicago Sports Network. But we'll also talk Illinois basketball. And like you, a large portion of that conversation will also be about life. And because the three of those things, I believe, go hand in hand. Sports is life. Remember those old T-shirts that used to say basketball is life? And that's exactly what it is. You know, sports is life. And it's a must that people understand that parents understand that. I want it to be entertaining, but I also want it to be informative. So it's a lot of fun. And then, you know, our third posting was actually up today. We posted it today with Coach Nancy Fay. She's the new head coach at the University of Illinois. And she came from WashU, which is Washington University in St. Louis, which is a more Division III, more of an academic program than anything else. What she did at that level was amazing. She has 5 national championships. I mean, and she basically, did her thing down there. And after sitting and having a conversation with her, I think she's going to be absolutely amazing at Illinois. But my first two podcasts one is about me and what's going on in my life right now. So I hope the listeners will go on and check it out. And then, what I would consider my first podcast was with the legendary Lou Henson. And I think a lot of people would enjoy that podcast because you'll learn some things about Coach Henson that I didn't even know. And I played for him and how he was a trailblazer. Did you know at the time when schools were segregated, he integrated Hardin-Simmons University, which was his first head coaching job. And he's also the AD there. And he told them that, hey, I'm not taking this job unless you integrate this school. Wow. And you integrate the basketball program. Now, see, a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that. Right. I mean, and I would have never figured that having played for the man, not saying that he was a racist or anything of that nature, but you just didn't know because at that time, and you can contest to this, head coaches were head coaches, and then your relationship was normally with the assistant coaches. Yep. So I just really didn't know. So I have grown, and again, you mentioned this earlier. You never get from your coaches what you want from them, what they're trying to give you until after you're gone, or until after you left that program. And I'll tell you, as much as I love Coach Coach Hambrick, I've grown to love Coach Henson because of the lessons that he taught. And then, of course, Coach C is like my pops, Coach Collins, because of all the lessons that he's pouring into me as well. And I wish I had all three, but I don't. Coach Hambrick, of course, passed away, but I still have, mentors in Coach Henson and Coach Collins, and that's just a blessing. But the podcast, man, I wish people go out and listen to it. And like I tell everybody, I'm telling you, rate it, give us a rating, and please comment on it. I mean, if it's not good, if there's things in there that are not good, let me know. I can take a scab because it doesn't help me get better. Right. And that's what I want to do. So the podcast is going on great. And then also coming out, and you mentioned my book. My book is also called The Fadeaway, but the subtitle is From the Village and Back. And what the story is going to be about is broken down into 4 quarters about this little black boy that grew up in the village, that moved to Inglewood, that became an All-American in high school and All-American in college and went on to play, but understood because of the lessons that his grandmother gave him that he had to come back and give back to the city where he was from. Right. And that's why I'm at UIC Engage. I woke up one morning, Vel, after watching the news and watching all of the bodies of the young black men that they were pulling out of, God knows everywhere, every day. And I went into school one day and I told Coach, I'm resigning, I'm not coming back. And he was blown away. He was flabbergasted. He thought I was crazy, the same as my wife and a lot of other people when I told them, but I needed to do more. Right. And as my wife would tell you, she said, well, you got into coaching to help people, to help these kids. Right. I said, yeah. I was like, but baby, these 12 kids are already in college. I got about 1,200, 12,000, even 12 million that are not even going to college and that don't even have a thought or an idea that they can. Yeah. So, nothing gets moving until you move it. Yeah. And that's why I hung up the whistle. I was fortunate enough to meet Dean Tatum over in the College of Education, who asked me to start and run this program, the UIC Engage program. I'm doing that. My Shy Read program, which will be a summer continuing education program during the summer. And I say continuing education because one of our biggest issues is, and you know this as a teacher, when kids get out of school, they got 2-3 months and their brains go to mush. Yeah. So you spend the next month teaching what you had taught them before just to catch them up so you can move forward. Yep. So what I want to do with the Shy Read program is to bridge that gap in between summer and the fall where these kids don't forget all of the stuff that they read, but they improve. And at the same time, we get to go in there and learn some basketball skills, some life skills, and get better. Hey, man,
we have have always had, since, we kind of formed our relationship, I've always had a lot of synergy. Seems as though we're doing, the same things, or a lot of the same things, and which is why I kind of changed my show the first season, or the second season. The first season was just, explaining, chapters of the book, Understanding Life Through the Game of Basketball. And we kind of went over the 8 chapters in the book, the first 8 shows, but the second season coming back now, Life in Basketball, I want people to, understand that people in Chicagoland or wherever can work together, but also to get people to know that, to know what's going on, so that they can know about the Shy Read program. They can know about, your podcast, know about my books or my, school programs, because any help that we can get that's positive is needed. And I really think it's a lot of people that want to help, but it's really not a lot of people that know that it's help there. Right. Now, the only thing that we have to do is get the powers that be that can control bringing in programs like yours or mine to say this is needed. And if it's a program, that's going to, sponsor programs like yours, or if it's a program like mine where, I have to get contracts or whatever, those particular people have to say, look, how much is a body worth? You know what I'm saying? Like we have to, can we do this to be able to help the individuals that we all are serving? Because if you're any type of teacher, coach, leader, you have to be genuinely concerned about people. And if you're not genuinely concerned, you probably need to find another hobby, probably need to find another job, find another career, because you're in it for the wrong reason, And, you say, like, when you left UIC, it's funny because I was still a dean at Orr, and that was when Coach really got the job, and y'all had came, he was going to all the schools, meeting people, and, y'all came in my office, because me and Lou was in there talking, and, we talked for about 2 hours, then, with, you was the bridge to introduce him to, the Chicago coaches and things, and we kind of all sat in my office talking, and so, and really, I came up there. I don't know if you remember this, but I came up. I don't know why I was up there. Sometimes I just stop up at UIC. I just get a feeling, But I came up there about 2 weeks before that, and me and you sat in your office and talked. Yeah. And then because I remember telling Sloan, he said Deon left and gone. I said I was just up there with him, a couple of weeks ago. I said and I text you, because we had a conversation. I text you some stuff. You text back. And I'm like, okay, but yeah, I didn't know that you were still there. That's big, man. But we talked about everything other than you are on the Illini All-Century team, for people that don't know. But I really appreciate your time, man. This was well needed for people to just understand more about you, the gift and the journey that you've been on, but also how you are willing to give back to, the communities, the neighborhoods, even with, Bless the Ball, when my wife kind of gave it to me. She woke up, said, I had a dream. You had your own company. This was the name of it. So, she kind of put it all together. It was kind of different, like Blessed to be Balling. So we shortened it down a little bit. Then I came up with the whole concept of it's not just basketball, but just life, balling or whatever. But, I'm like, if I'm only working with 15 players and I can work with a mass amount of people, that's why we get in and do what we do with those that we do it with. Everybody don't understand that, man. But, I know that, you have a great wife, lovely kids, always, see the wife at the Final Four. She, you always say, man, she in my pocket. She in my pocket. But, I mean, great time, man. So I normally do what's called a hot seat, because we already been on for a while. I'm going to just ask you 2 questions. Okay. So my first question is, who is the best player that you have ever played against?
Well, I came up during a time when we had a bunch of ballers, man. But the best basketball player I ever played against. I mean, Jamie Brandon was an absolute beast, an absolute monster, man. And when I talked about losing that game our senior year, it was a lot of that was because of Jamie.
Right.
A lot of people don't understand and don't know or don't remember how good a basketball player JB was. So, JB definitely up there. Marcus Liberty, Doc was, a pure talent, just able to do everything with the basketball. When I saw Ben Wilson when I was in 8th grade, of course I didn't get a chance to play with him or really know him, but that 6'8" type guard was really what he was, and that's what Marcus Liberty was. Marcus was the beginning of the LeBron James. James is, not the athletic guy that he is, but the skill of that 6'8", 6'9" kid, just being able to do everything with the basketball. And, so those will have to be two of the best guys that I've played against. And I know, I'm missing I played against a slew of great players from Jimmy Jackson, Shaquille O'Neal, a bunch of those guys. But in this city, those two guys were probably it.
And it's funny that you say that because, like, people compare Jordan and, LeBron. It's always in Chicago will be that competition of those two individuals. And I don't know if it was Tracy, Deon, or whoever, but I asked a couple of people like Marcus or Jamie. I had players that, because, Jamie raps now. They'll see, Jamie. I'm like, do y'all know who this dude is? Like, no, I'm like, go and Google this dude. Go on YouTube. Me and Lefty talked about his last points as a high school senior in the state championship. He dunked the ball and he pulled himself up through the rim and stood on top of the rim. Like sick. Me personally, I was in the 7th grade. I never forget. It was a Tribune article, and I wore number 30 because of Marcus Liberty. It was a Tribune article that said, the name of Marcus Liberty jersey also applies to him. And I still got that picture, right? I was a Marcus Liberty fan. You asked me, Marcus or Jamie, I love JB, but I think Marcus was better. They were two totally different. Tree broke it down, two totally different players. But it's funny that you mentioned those two guys. My second final question to you, man, what would you like to see improve with Chicago basketball?
What would I like to improve? I'm going to look at this in 2 different ways. I'm going to look at this from a coaching standpoint, and I'm going to look at this from a fan standpoint. And I guess as a basketball historian as well, I'd like to see us get back to what we were. When, you talked about a pro having a mid-range game. I want to see that come back here. As a coach, when I would go recruiting, I broke down the country in places where I had to go and get players. If I wanted a lightning quick breakdown guard or something like that, I was going over to the East Coast. If I wanted an athlete, I was going south. If I wanted a shooter or something like that, I was looking further west. When I wanted a complete player that could do almost everything on the floor, that had grit, that had toughness, I was coming home.
Stay at home.
That's what I think we're missing. I watched these kids today when I was a coach, when I was coaching at UIC or Lewis and Clark. We're either getting to the basket or we're trying to shoot 3-point shots. We're either playing too fast or we're not playing together. You know this because this was probably at the end of your era, but during my era, you played team basketball.
Yep.
You came out, you played for your teammates, you loved your teammates. It wasn't all this individual stuff, but you still played with that grit, that toughness, but yet your skill level was back up. Had your mid-range game, you had your jump shot. Fuck, kids can't even make free throws today. You could shoot free throws and make free throws, and you knew how to play the game of basketball. So I know there's a lot of coaches out there that are trying to do the right thing. I need the high school coaches to probably take over a little bit more than the AAU coaches, because for the AAU coaches, it's about, playing a bunch of games, and these kids aren't getting prepared, and they're not getting drilling and the lesson and the schooling. because you just said it several times. You had to tell a kid to go Google somebody. I had
Right.
to, kids would come in and be like, Coach, did you used to play? Fool, go Google me.
Right.
You will see what I did. I would love to see the kids get back and understand what their past was, what the past was, and who the past players are, because I know we did. We did. And so I'd love to see them do that because I think it would help them. And I would love to see that skill level get back up to where it used to be and that we're not so one-dimensional. Because I think that's another reason why when our AAU teams go off and they play, the teams from D.C., the teams from Houston, the teams from Atlanta, we end up getting our asses whooped.
Right.
We're not better than that.
Right. Yeah, man. And, Notary said it best. He said, "It's not a coach in the country that don't want a Chicago kid."
Yes.
Maybe a situation where they may not take them, but it's not a coach in the country that don't want a Chicago kid. Any and all coaches can vouch for that, man.
That's why Illinois struggled. That's why Illinois struggled. All the other coaches were coming in here taking the kids from Chicago.
Yep.
Now with Coach Underwood and then having my man Chin down there, I know they're making a big push back up here on the city. And I don't know which coaches are listening. I hope it's a bunch of them listening. But we also had that respect for our state schools. Keep the kids at home, man, so their families get to see them, so they'll really get to enjoy what the heck it is that this state is all about. Because like I told kids when I was recruiting them, no other state is going to love you like your own home.
Yep. And, the good thing, and me and Tracy talked about it, me and Tim Anderson talked about it, the good thing with DePaul, Loyola, Chicago State, UIC, I'm a product of it. Even, with, U of I, SIU, but with the schools in the city, you can really be away from home, but be home, because, you can just be on campus and you don't really have to go back to all of that, madness. Like, last thing, even like Mark Miller, Mark was from the Village. It was right, he would get the Village would be packed come to see Mark at the games. But Mark didn't want to leave campus. He didn't have to walk down the block back to the house. You know what I'm saying? So you have that sense of safety and covering, with that. Now you got Tim Anderson at DePaul, Tracy at Chicago State, Chin at U of I. So, it'll be interesting, man, to see. But, Coach, I definitely appreciate it, man. Y'all go check out the podcast, Fade Away. Pick up Coach book once it drops, Fade Away. All right, go check out my book, Understanding Life Through the Game of Basketball. We got links to all three in there. Listen, if you know a school administrator, if you know a principal, all right, if you know teachers that may have pool with administrators or whatever, tell them to get in contact with both myself as well as Deon. Because, again, I'm a person, I don't mind supporting and promoting somebody else. If you can't get my program, get Deon's program. Or better yet, get both our programs, and spread them out the city and the surrounding areas so that we can do better for these kids. So I always, finish, man, with, the same parting words over and over again. I always say you should be striving for the top, because it's crowded as hell at the bottom.
Love it, bro.
Yeah, man. And D, I definitely appreciate it, man. I got to run. This is probably the longest, show other than Tree, but this is what we do. We talk, we conversate, and we ain't did nothing but had a brotherly conversation as we always do. But hopefully we've been able to bless somebody's life and educate them as well in the process about both life and basketball. So until next week, Tuesday, we will be back, life and basketball. D, I hit you, man, because we need to kind of hook up and do a couple things, as well. And we'll go from there, man. I appreciate you. Chicago, yes, around the country, because we all around the country. Be good. Remember, understand life through the game of basketball, because they both go the same. Appreciate it. Peace. All right, D. Yes, sir.